Good evening, and welcome to Money Matters. My name is Kimon, and I'm a business attorney at GrowthCounsel in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I focus my practice in life sciences, healthcare, and information technology. Tonight we're continuing our series on life sciences leaders in the Delaware Valley. Before we get started, I want to remind our viewers that from time to time, financial issues relating to life sciences companies or matters will be discussed on the show. These discussions are not and should not be viewed as financial advice. Moreover, since the show is pre-recorded and shown at a later time, the information may no longer be current. You should always check with your financial advisor before entering into any financial transaction. I'm happy to have with me tonight as my co-host, Charlie Huntington. Charlie's the head of public relations for Life Sciences PA. Life Sciences PA is the voice of advancement for the life sciences in the Delaware Valley and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Charlie, thanks for co-hosting.
It's a pleasure, Kimon.
Well, this is always a busy time of year for Life Sciences PA. We just had the annual dinner recently, and I know there's a number of things that are on the horizon. I was wondering if you would take a couple minutes and tell our viewers, maybe recap the dinner and tell them a little bit about what's next on the agenda.
Thanks, Kimon. Dinner was great. It was held at the Convention Center. 1,300 people from 9 different countries. Amazing turnout, and as usual, the awards went to some very good candidates, well deserved. I want to highlight 2 additional events which are coming up. One is Lobby Day, and I know you and I have participated in the past in that. Mm-hmm. And the magic of Lobby Day is you're walking the halls, not only meeting your legislators, but you're walking them with CEOs and other folks, in my case, who probably won't take my call during the day. Their phones don't work in in underground, so it's been a great time. So there's that. There's also May 9th. I'd like to highlight our Spring Social, which is probably one of 4 must-go-to events a year. That's going to be at the Sheraton Valley Forge. Okay. If our viewers would like to get more information on either of those, they could go to lifesciences, which is plural, pa.org, and both of those events would be spelled out nicely there.
All right, thank you very much. Well, we have a great guest this evening, and I'm anxious to get him out here. But before I do, I just want to remind our viewers that if you have a question that you would like us to answer on a future show, watch this video to see how you do it.
You can have your questions answered on Money Matters. Please go to our website, money-matterstv.com. On our homepage, click on the banner on the right that says, Send us your questions. While you're on our website, you can find information about our host and guests, as well as show notes and links about this show and past shows. Money Matters is also available as a podcast on iTunes and Stitcher, so you can listen to Money Matters while you're on the go. That website address, again, is money, M-O-N-E-Y, -matters, M-A-T-T-E-R-S, TV.com.
Well, I'd like to introduce now our special guest this evening, Matt Handel. Matt is the CEO and co-founder of ExpressCells, an early-stage biotech company using genetic engineering to create custom cell lines for biological research. Prior to co-founding ExpressCells, he spent 11 years with each of Merck and Shire Pharmaceuticals, where he launched many products, including Singulair, which became Merck's largest selling product. Mr. Handel left Big Pharma to focus on more entrepreneurial opportunities, and in the process has become a serial entrepreneur, with ExpressCells being his 3rd startup. In addition to being a life sciences entrepreneur, executive, and board member, Matt is also active in several local nonprofits. He did his undergraduate work at Princeton University, where he earned a BA in politics, and thereafter earned his MS in marketing and operations management from MIT's Sloan School of Management. And I'm sure I've never said this before on the show, but he was a 3-time champion on Jeopardy, winning $63,401 plus fabulous parting gifts. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kimon.
How were you first attracted to a career in the life sciences?
I'd like to say it was a well thought out plan, but I sort of fell into it. So I was at business school at MIT. looking at a lot of opportunities for my summer job. And one day, one of the second years said, I think you might be interested in the job I had last summer. It was with a company called Sterling Drug, which has now been bought out several times over. But I interviewed, got the job, and really found that I liked the pharmaceutical industry. I'm really looking for, I was at the time and still am looking for challenges, for something that was a dynamic industry, and pharmaceuticals really had it. And not just pharmaceuticals, if you think of life sciences, biologics and other parts of the life sciences, there's always something new coming along.
At the early part of career, as I said in my in my introduction, you spent at Big Pharma,
Right.
where you were focusing on developing therapeutics and products.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're with a startup company that is basically focusing on a biological tool
Right.
to help researchers, I guess, expedite their research in the development of things like therapeutics. How did this transition come about?
Well, it took a long time. I've been in the business over 25 years. I'd say where it really changed was when I was at Shire, as we discussed, and I moved into business development. In fact, in my 11 years there, I spent a lot of time in business development. And what was great about that is that Shire was a company that had a philosophy of what they called search and development. They would find great opportunities, license them in or acquire them, and then finish developing them. Had a great deal of success. Part of that is being able to identify great young companies that had really brilliant ideas that we could turn into successful money-making products. And I learned something being part of those discussions. I found out that I wanted to be on the other side of the table, because when I looked at these smaller companies, it goes back to what first got me into the industry. They were dynamic. Most of them were affecting change in some way. And I think what was most important is that a smaller company really was able to move without bureaucracy and without a lot of what I would call the steps that bog people down. Small group of people unified in a goal, usually unified in trying to help a particular patient population. And that really moved me into wanting to be an entrepreneur. So how did I get involved in research tools? Part of it is because I found a great opportunity working with a brilliant professor out of Temple University who had a great technology, one that really applies well to helping scientists discover new therapeutics. And it's also a good business opportunity. I've used the old Levi Strauss description. A lot of people went out to California in 1849 to try to dig for gold. Most didn't find gold. Levi Strauss went out there. He sold to the people digging for gold. Last I checked, that company's still doing okay.
So, can you talk a little bit about the similarities and differences in working with a company that's trying to develop a therapeutic and working with a company that's developing a biological tool to help researchers expedite their discovery of the next therapeutic?
Well, the similarities are very much on the science side. We're still using the same basic tools of science. It's life science. So in this case, it's genetic engineering. And there are a lot of uses for genetic engineering, but it's still the basic tools are the same. We use a tool called CRISPR, which is a naturally occurring molecule. Several people were involved in the discovering of CRISPR, and a lot of the work was done at the Broad Institute, who holds the US patent rights. So we're using the same technology that other people are to create therapeutics. But where we're different is because we're creating a research tool from a business perspective, it allows us to get on the market much faster. If you're creating a therapeutic, it usually takes at least 7, maybe 10 years, maybe much longer, costs hundreds of millions of dollars, and it requires you to get FDA approval. But when you're creating a tool, once you have the product developed, and we do have a developed product, you don't have to go through that level of approval because the science itself is not being used in a person, it's being used to help develop the therapies for a person.
Mm-hmm. How would you say that your broad experience in the pharmaceutical industry helped prepare you for your role as a CEO of ExpressCells?
Well, you just said the key word, broad experience. One of the big issues you find as a CEO is that everything comes under your responsibility, even if you're not an expert in it. And so it's not that you can do everything, it's being able to work with people who are doing the different tools. So when I was in Big Pharma, I started off on the commercial side, sales, marketing, market analytics. And for the first few years, almost everyone I interacted with within the company was in sales, marketing, market analytics. But as I developed my career and went into product management, especially for new products, those that were in development, I spent quite a bit of time working with R&D. I spent quite a bit of time working with the supply chain and operations people, procurement, finance. You could go down the list. And that's actually the best preparation, because when you are running a company, as I said, everything comes under your responsibility, even if you're not doing it yourself. So knowing what to expect, and I don't want to claim I know everything to expect. Becoming a CEO, there's always a surprise, sometimes daily, but it's knowing what's out there and also knowing where you need to go to find people. And in fact, that's one of the nice takeaways. I've built a very large network, so when I have needs, I can reach out to people I know who can either be consultants or advisors, or sometimes just, a good sounding board.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is the most challenging aspect of your role as CEO of the company?
Well, I'm going to say getting everything done. I say this only half jokingly, that I actually have 3 full-time jobs right now. Number one, I need to raise money for the company. And that requires quite a bit of work, and that's probably the first priority for me at the moment, because if we don't have money, nothing else gets done. The second is we need to build operations, which isn't just a simple thing. You need to hire people. We need to get our facility put together. We need to negotiate licenses, make sure that we're covering all our legal bases. And then the third part is we're planning to start revenue operations in the second half of the year. So we need to start looking for customers. So the toughest challenge is, how do you do all of that and do it all effectively? And the answer is you can't. No one, when someone says, as a CEO, I'm the center of everything, that's not the way it works. It's about prioritization, and it's about finding where you can get good people who can do things to help the company, because no one person can do it by him or herself.
Charlie and I have been doing this show for, maybe 8 years now. And one of the things I've noticed is when people come out of big pharma, people who are executives maybe at big pharma for many years, and they pursue an entrepreneurial opportunity, they invariably say that they wouldn't have been able to make that transition without substantial support on the home front. And I'm assuming that you probably had a similar experience, so can you talk a little bit about how your family supported you as you were in the process of this transition?
I could not do this without my family. My wife, Amy, has been amazing in this. I also have to point out that the name of the company, ExpressCells, she's the one who came up with the name. So we wouldn't have the current company without my wife and family. But I think there are a few parts to this. The first is, it really is a family decision. When you start a company, unless you can get revenues immediately, you're accepting that there's going to be a financial change, and that has to be a family decision. The other one is how much it impacts your life. At the beginning, and this is my third startup, we didn't have offices. Our extra bedroom, and you've heard this from a lot of entrepreneurs, becomes your office. So you've got someone in the house typing away, occasionally having teleconferences. You need to make sure everyone's on board with that. And then I think the last part as well is, it's very different from big pharma. When I joined big pharma in the early 90s, steady paycheck, everything was predictable. The biggest question often was, so will the bonus be X or Y? It wasn't that much of a difference. Here, you're all taking a risk together, which is, if it works, it's amazing. If it doesn't work, it can be a challenge. So if anyone's thinking of being an entrepreneur, all I can say is make sure your family's on board and thank them profusely for working with you on this. But it is really a team effort.
Should if someone wants to do what you've done, should they expect to get paid for the first few years, or should they go into this not expecting to get paid as an entrepreneur, if they're looking for money?
I've been told by many people, that most successful leaders can accept delayed gratification. And this is what entrepreneurship is. I think there's a vision that comes from Shark Tank or from a few other opportunities, that you walk in with a great idea. Someone on Shark Tank will say, I'll give you $500,000 for 25% of the company, and 6 months later you're selling millions of dollars worth of product. And yeah, it happens occasionally if you've got that killer app, for example. But a lot of companies, you have to build things up. You have to build up operations. You have to build up a customer base. If you get investment, investors want to see it used wisely. That doesn't mean you don't get to pay yourself once you have investment, but it's not like you're going to be able to do what you're doing in large companies. And I'll just give you one example. I was speaking with another entrepreneur who was looking to hire for a staffer. Person is at a large company and said, as soon as you can pay me what I can get at the large company, I'm going to be there. I still want to be an entrepreneur. Like, well, actually,
Doesn't sound like they're very hungry, right?
right. They're looking for security. And I've been fortunate. I've worked in the business for a number of years. I was in a position I could choose to do this. But that's one of the things you have to accept.
As you're guiding others, though, you say expect not to be paid for the first few years.
It's nice if you can.
Right, right.
But it's not. If you're looking for guarantees,
Yeah.
I will put it this way. If you're looking for guarantees, I used to say you can work for the government, but even that's not a guarantee anymore. But we're not going there today.
Let's transition to ExpressCells. Can you
Please.
describe that for us, please?
Sure. So ExpressCells is a young company. It was founded last year. I'm the co-founder along with the scientist who created the technology. His name is Dr. Oscar Perez Leal out of Temple University. He's a brilliant scientist, holds multiple patents. This is actually our second startup together. And that's how we got involved, because Oscar was working on this technology and he approached me saying that he thought this would be a good opportunity to work together. So what are we doing exactly? So we're doing genetic engineering. In fact, we're doing what's called knock-ins. Think of a cell. For people who's been a while since biology, you probably still remember that there's the nucleus in the cell that contains the DNA, the genes that code for all the proteins that create life. Genetic engineering has been going on for a long time, but it's been a difficult process. You know, the cell is designed for you not to play around with the genetic code because it usually hurts the ability of the cell to thrive. A few years ago, as I said, researchers at several institutions, including the Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard, discovered a molecule called CRISPR. It occurs in bacteria, and it actually allows a scientist to precisely cut into DNA. So if you can target a spot, you can use CRISPR to cut right into that spot. That's changed what you call knockouts, the ability to remove DNA or deactivate DNA. And people have heard about this. You may have heard there were what the so-called CRISPR babies in China a couple of years ago, or a couple of months ago, sorry, where a scientist actually used CRISPR to deactivate a gene into fetuses, and the babies were born without that gene functioning. We're not going there, by the way. We have no interest in doing anything in human beings for a variety of ethical reasons. But it's become a lot easier to cut genes out. The hard part is inserting genes, so putting new DNA into a cell. And right now, current technologies still require months of work. They're not very efficient. They tend to be limited in what they can do. You can only insert one gene at a time. Oscar came up with a better way. And he came up with it because, as a research scientist, he was very frustrated with the current technologies out there. And it's the classic story of he needed to solve his own problem, but he's not just a physician and scientist. He also has a business degree, and he very wisely saw that this was a business opportunity as well. So they patented the technology that allows for faster genetic insertions, and we were able to build a business out of it. And what are we doing right now? We're inserting up to 3 genes at a time, not just one. We can do it in some cells as few as 30 days versus 4 to 6 months for current technologies. And what we're doing is we're inserting what are called reporters. So people might be aware jellyfish and other animals can glow. Those are called bioluminescent proteins. You know, they can glow green, blue, red. Well, we can take the genes that code for those proteins and insert them into a cell. So if you're a research scientist, rather than having to squint through a microscope and try to figure out what's going on in black and white, you can tag the cell with different colors, different parts of the cell, and then when you're testing your new pharmaceutical product or your new biologic, instead of having to do weeks of analysis, you can literally see what's going on in real time.
So what are all of the company's areas of focus right now?
So our first area of focus is, as I said, research tools, putting in these reporter systems. We're using several cell lines that are commonly available for scientists. One of them is called Gila, for example. Some people watching may have seen the movie about Henrietta Lacks, who was a woman in the 1950s who had cancer. Some of her cells were harvested and used for science. Well, they're still being...
Unbeknownst to her while she's living,
yes,
right?
that's one of the ethical issues, which is cell lines should not just be taken from patients. It needs to be respected. But now these cell lines, and not just Henrietta Lacks' cell lines, are used widely for research purposes. Because they're derived from cancer cells, they're immortal. They continue to divide. So once you make a genetic change to them, it's a permanent genetic change. That's our first area of focus. Our next area will be to look at what are called primary cells, regular cells coming from people, primarily stem cells. Because if you can alter a stem cell and insert genes, now you have a whole range of research opportunities. One of the areas, though, I want to caveat is these are all, again, for research tools. We're not looking to do human therapeutics for a variety of business reasons and also intellectual property reasons. Frankly, one reason to do that is as we create new product lines, we'll be able to market them. So we think, after a certain amount of time, if we have the stem cell product ready, we'll be able to roll that straight out into the marketplace.
So do you have any proprietary IP?
We do. So the patent that we're working with was filed by Temple University. We've been negotiating with them. They've been great partners to work with on this, and we're currently negotiating the license right now. I think we're most of the way. Who knows? You said at the start of the show things change. I'm hoping by the time people watch the show we've made much more progress. But it's been a very friendly and a very professional interaction, and I'm really glad to be working with Temple on this.
That's great. What about FDA approval? Is that paramount in this or not a factor?
It isn't, because it comes back to the cells that we're providing aren't going to be used as a therapeutic. It'll be as a test. So a good example of where it might be used is for toxicity. We actually have some standard cell lines that we've already created that once we launch will be on our website that people will be able to buy. Please don't go to the website now. We're not ready yet. And what you'll be able to do is test your new compound and see what happens to the cells. Do they die? Do they stay alive? We actually have one video where you can not only watch cells dying in a toxic substance, you can see how they die. And that's actually very informative for a researcher, because even if a substance is toxic, it still allows, by knowing what it does, they can start adjusting their compound to try to address it. We'll also be doing quite a bit of what we call custom work, where if someone's researching a specific molecule or a specific target in the cell, we will create to order a cell inserting the genes that allow the cell to light up.
Actually, time's getting a little short. I wanted to ask you how you're currently being funded and what you anticipate in the near term in terms of funding needs.
Well, this is where we should always put the caveats. So funding falls into really three categories. The first, founders. You've heard about bootstrapping. I've put some money into this company. That's how convinced I am that this is a great opportunity and a great technology. The second are individual investors. So we have some individual angels through our network who have been very interested in the product, very interested in the business concept, and they have agreed to invest. The third,
They're probably very interested in the fact that you're running the company too.
well, that comes back to a point that a colleague of mine made. He said, think of people investing in three groups. Group one are the people who invest because they like the idea and or the people. To your point, they maybe it's me, maybe it's Oscar. We also have a commercial lead who's joined us, David Becker. They look at the team and they say, we like the team. The second are people who will see the operations. We're building a lab right now at 3675 Market Street, create a new lab space. They might say, we like your website, we like the things you're doing. And that still falls into sort of those groups of individuals and as well as the founders. The third group are the ones who are going to be excited as we really build a business. And part of that is why we're now pitching to what we call institutions. Really two groups. VCs that run early stage venture capital funds, or angel investor groups. And in fact, we've spent a lot of time talking to angel investors. These groups are very interesting because they often have a number of people. It could be as small as 25, it could be 250 people. But they invest as individuals, but they pool their talents. And so it's really been a pleasure to work with some of these groups. We've been chatting with several because of the level of professionalism and the fact that they don't just provide you money. The really good groups provide you with insights, they provide you with advisors, board members, and it goes back to what I said at the beginning. No one person can do this by him or herself, and having investors who can help you makes a world of difference.
Good for you.
You did talk a little bit about your competitors and
Right.
you distinguished your product in terms of the speed, the number of things that you can actually put
Right.
into the cell and the speed with which you can do it. What would success look like for ExpressCells?
I'm going to give you 3 steps. Success 1 is getting on the marketplace, as I said, in the second half of the year and starting to generate revenue early. That makes us very different from other life sciences companies where, as I said, it's 7 to 10 years of research. I think the second is to be able to develop new products. I have a great deal of confidence that we can do that, but that does require money as well. And then the third part is ultimately being able to grow and, we hope, exit the company. That will build up something that is valuable, that people feel really makes a difference to our customers, and that we can either partner with or become part of a larger organization.
Charlie, we have about 2 minutes, I think, or
Okay.
so. You might want to ask something about
Yeah.
Temple or...
Yeah, that'd be great. So your co-founder, you've spoken about him a little bit earlier,
Right.
Matt, but Dr. Oscar Perez Leal, professor at Temple. How did you guys meet? And then maybe spend a few seconds on the accelerator program.
Sure. So the reason that we met actually goes back to my first startup. It was run out of a program at the University City Science Center called Phase 1 Ventures, where they help create companies for member institutions. And I'd like to say it was a matchmaking service. The people at the Science Center knew me. When Oscar presented his idea, they thought it would be a good idea for us to work together. We met each other. I knew some of the people at Temple, so they also were comfortable. And while that company hasn't really moved the way we wanted to and is sort of on hold right now, because we built that relationship, it really allowed us to move forward. And that's an important part of the ecosystem. So the Science Center has done good work. At Temple for ExpressCells, we went through an accelerator program. That's also helpful. But I think the key thing is we have a lot of really smart scientists in Philadelphia, in the region. We have some really good business people. It's getting them together, because I don't know if I would have met Oscar without that introduction, but now it works.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, and I think we could do a whole second show. We have enough to talk about. I want to thank our special guest this evening, Matt Handel. Matt,
Thank you.
Thank you. You're terrific.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Charlie, thanks for co-hosting.
Sure, Kimon.
The next guest on Money Matters TV is Dr. Marion Mass. Thank you all for watching this evening, and we'll see you again next time.